The wind howled through the skeletal winter trees as Eleanor Matthews stood before the imposing stone mansion, keys clutched in her trembling hand. Snowflakes settled on her chestnut hair, now streaked with silver that hadn't been there 6 months ago. Behind her, a station wagon packed with hastily gathered belongings and two children who hadn't spoken much since Chicago. Beside her, an aging golden retriever named Rusty, his breath forming clouds in the frigid Michigan air. "Is this really it, Mom?" Sophia asked, her 15-year-old voice cracking with uncertainty. "This is where we're starting over?" Eleanor stared at the Victorian stone house looming against the darkening December sky. Its windows stared back like hollow eyes, judging her desperation, her choices, her escape. "It's what we can afford," Eleanor replied, trying to infuse confidence into her voice. $100 for a four-bedroom house with history. Some people would call that a miracle. Where are you listening from today? Leave a comment below to join our community of storytellers. 18 years ago, Eleanor had worn white lace and promises, had believed Richard Matthews when he'd said he would cherish her forever. The successful real estate developer with the dazzling smile had seemed like everything she'd ever wanted. By 42, Eleanor had given up her position running the accounting department at a prestigious firm to become Mrs. Matthews, mother to their children, hostess of perfect dinner parties where Richard charmed everyone with tales of his expanding property developments across the Midwest. The Matthews Real Estate Group had grown into an empire of office buildings, luxury condominiums, and retail spaces spanning 3 states. Richard's political connections ran deep, with judges, mayors, and police chiefs attending his legendary fundraisers. The outside world saw only success and philanthropy. No one saw the bruises she became expert at concealing. No one heard the accusations whispered in darkness when balance sheets didn't match or when dinner wasn't perfect. No one knew how she learned to walk silently, to anticipate moods, to become smaller with each passing year. Until the night she found the emails, not just the ones to his 25-year-old secretary. Those would have been painful enough, but the others detailing money laundering schemes through Richard's development projects. When she'd confronted him, the mask had slipped completely. 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist, and a concussion later, Eleanor had made her decision while lying in a hospital bed. She would disappear with her children before Richard killed her. Now as she turned the ancient iron key in the lock of the Windsor mansion, Eleanor prayed she hadn't traded one nightmare for another. The door swung open with a groan that seemed to echo her own misgivings. Inside, time had stopped sometime in the late 70s. Furniture draped with yellowed sheets, crystal chandeliers webbed with dust, a grandfather clock frozen at 3:17. The children huddled behind her, Noah clutching Rusty's collar with 9-year-old fingers. "It smells like old books and sadness," Sophia whispered, her breath visible in the unheated air. Eleanor moved toward the thermostat, ancient and round on the wall. "We'll get the heat going. Bring in the essentials for tonight. Tomorrow we'll properly unpack." As they made trips to the car, the house seemed to watch them, its creaks and sighs almost conversational. Rusty refused to venture upstairs, his hackles rising whenever he faced the grand staircase with its ornate banister. Eleanor found herself drawn to a portrait hanging above the marble fireplace. A woman in her early 40s, elegant in a high-necked burgundy dress, her posture regal, but her eyes haunted. The brass plaque at the frame's bottom read, "Victoria Windsor, 1977. "She looks like you," Sophia said, appearing suddenly at Eleanor's side. "Same eyes." Indeed, there was an unsettling resemblance. Victoria's chestnut hair was styled differently, but her eyes held the same mixture of determination and weariness that Eleanor saw in her mirror each morning. "The Windsor family disappeared in 1978, Eleanor explained, recalling the sparse details from the property listing. The house has been empty since then. That's why we got it so cheaply. No one wants a house with history. You mean ghosts, Noah said matter-of-factly, his first complete sentence since they'd fled Chicago. He was clutching something, a porcelain doll with a cracked face, its Victorian-era dress yellowed with age. Where did you find that? Eleanor asked, fighting a wave of inexplicable dread. In my room, under the bed, Noah replied. Her name is Amelia. She told me. Eleanor reached for the doll, turning it over in her hands. On the back of its porcelain neck, etched in faded ink, Emily Windsor. But what made Eleanor's blood run cold was the reddish-brown stain across the doll's cracked cheek and the words scratched into its ceramic arm. Please save Mother. Noah, I think this should stay packed away, she said gently, but her son snatched it back with uncharacteristic force. She's scared, he insisted. She wants to help us. That night they huddled in the living room near the newly stoked fireplace, sleeping bags arranged like a fortress against the unknown. The wind outside played eerie melodies through the home's stonework. Somewhere, a piano key struck a solitary note that reverberated through empty hallways. Eleanor lay awake, listening to her children's breathing. Sophia tossed restlessly while Noah slept with unsettling stillness. The doll clutched to his chest. Rusty remained alert, his eyes fixed on the staircase, a low growl occasionally rumbling in his chest. In the darkest hour, Eleanor woke with absolute certainty that someone stood at the top of the stairs, a woman in flowing burgundy, her face half hidden in shadow. Find the truth, a voice whispered, soft as dust settling. Save my children. When Eleanor blinked, the figure vanished, but the scent of roses lingered where no flowers had bloomed for decades. Pine Hollow welcomed Eleanor with cautious curiosity. Small towns had long memories, and the Windsor mansion carried decades of whispered speculation. At Mildred's general store, Eleanor felt eyes following her as she purchased cleaning supplies and groceries. You're the one who bought the old Windsor place, said the proprietress, Mildred Jenkins, her 70 years worn comfortably on a face creased with laugh lines. Brave woman. It was affordable, Eleanor replied with a practiced smile, the same one she'd used at Richard's business dinners. Mildred leaned closer. Victoria Windsor was a lovely woman, too good for Howard if you ask me. When they vanished, this town lost something it never got back. Before Eleanor could inquire further, the bell above the door jingled. The store fell silent as Police Chief Walter Reynolds entered. Tall, silver-haired, with a smile that never reached his eyes, he reminded Eleanor viscerally of Richard. That same polished charm concealing something cold underneath. Mrs. Matthews, welcome to Pine Hollow, he said, extending a manicured hand. Word travels fast here. I understand you've taken up residence at the Windsor estate. Thank you, Chief Reynolds, she replied, noticing how Mildred had suddenly become occupied with rearranging canned goods. If you need anything, my office is always open, Reynolds continued. Old houses like that can be unpredictable, full of secrets, best left undisturbed. His smile remained fixed, but something in his tone made Eleanor's skin prickle with warning. Have you ever encountered a situation that seemed too good to be true? Share your experience in the comments below. Back at the mansion, Eleanor found Sophia in what must have been Victoria's study, leafing through a leather-bound book. It's her diary, Sophia said, eyes wide. Listen to this. Howard returned from the council meeting in a rage tonight. When I asked about the development project funds, he struck me for the first time in front of the children. I no longer recognize the man I married. Eleanor took the diary with trembling hands, scanning entries that mirrored her own experiences with Richard with uncanny precision. Meanwhile, Noah had begun drawing obsessively, detailed sketches of the house with hidden rooms and passages he couldn't possibly know existed. When asked how he knew, he would only say, "Amelia showed me." That evening, Rusty's frantic barking led them to a section of the library wall that, when pressed in the right sequence, revealed a hidden music room. Inside stood a grand piano, sheet music still open to Chopin's Nocturne in C minor. On the piano bench lay more of Victoria's journals and a stack of papers detailing financial transactions for something called the Pine Hollow Restoration Fund. "Mom, look at this," Sophia said, holding up a newspaper clipping from 1978. It says Howard Windsor was heading a major redevelopment project for the town. Victoria suspected embezzlement. Eleanor's accounting background allowed her to quickly make sense of Victoria's notes. She was right. Millions were being siphoned from public funds. And look, Police Chief William Reynolds was listed as a project advisor. "Reynolds? Like our Chief Reynolds?" Sophia asked. "His father, perhaps," Eleanor murmured, though the coincidence seemed too convenient. That night the piano played itself, haunting notes floating through the house at 3:17 a.m., the time frozen on the grandfather clock. Noah appeared in Eleanor's doorway, Amelia clutched in his arms. "Emily wants to show us something," he said solemnly. Following her son's lead, Eleanor found herself removing a section of baseboard in the master bedroom, revealing a narrow passage down to the basement. There, behind a newly plastered wall that Rusty had been scratching at since their arrival, they discovered a hidden vault. Inside lay the evidence Victoria had collected: ledgers showing embezzlement, photographs of Howard meeting with town officials, including Chief William Reynolds, and audio reels labeled with dates. Most disturbing was a final letter addressed to Victoria's sister. "Howard knows I've discovered the truth. I fear for my children. If anything happens to us, find Diana. She helped me record the council meeting." As they ascended from the basement, Sophia stood frozen at the top of the stairs, staring at a transparent figure of a teenage girl in 1970s clothing that vanished as Eleanor reached her daughter's side. Would you dare explore a secret room in a situation like this? Let me know in the comments what you would do. Over the following days, Eleanor pieced together the Windsor family's final months. Victoria had discovered her husband's criminal activities, gathered evidence, and planned to expose him. Then the entire family had vanished without a trace. Through Evelyn Donovan, the elderly bookshop owner and Pine Hollow's unofficial historian, Eleanor learned more about Victoria. "She came to me, you know," Evelyn confided over tea in her cluttered shop. "A week before they disappeared, black eye poorly concealed with makeup, said Howard had become dangerous, that he'd threaten the children if she didn't stop asking questions." "Did she go to the police?" Eleanor asked. "Chief Reynolds told her she needed psychiatric help," Evelyn replied bitterly. "Said wealthy men don't abuse their wives and that Victoria needed to stop spreading vicious rumors." When Eleanor began noticing a black sedan parked at the end of her driveway each evening, she approached local newspaper reporter Heather Palmer. The 40-something journalist had been investigating a series of domestic violence cases that had been systematically dismissed by Pine Hollow authorities for decades. "There's a pattern here," Heather explained, spreading files across her desk. "Women report abuse, authorities dismiss them, and then they either recant, leave town, or disappear." The implications chilled Eleanor to her core. "You think Victoria wasn't the first?" "Or the last," Heather confirmed grimly. "I've identified at least 7 cases since 1970 with suspicious circumstances, all involving prominent men in the community." As Eleanor left the newspaper office, Chief Reynolds intercepted her on the sidewalk, his cruiser pulling alongside her with alarming precision. "Mrs. Matthews," he called through the open window, "I understand you've been asking questions about Victoria Windsor." "Local history interests me," Eleanor replied evenly. "Some history is best left buried," Reynolds said, his affable mask slipping momentarily. "For everyone's safety, especially your children's." That night, Eleanor received a call from the hospital. Heather Palmer had been found unconscious after her car was forced off the road. Before losing consciousness, she had given Eleanor's name as her emergency contact. At the hospital, Heather pressed a USB drive into Eleanor's hand. "Richard is here in Pine Hollow," she whispered hoarsely. "Reynolds contacted him. They're fraternity brothers from Yale, part of a network they call the Brotherhood." Eleanor's world tilted on its axis. If Richard had found her, everything she'd done to protect her children had been for nothing. Returning home, she found Sophia had hacked into the town records using skills Eleanor hadn't known her daughter possessed. "Mom, you need to see this," Sophia said, her face pale in the laptop's glow. "Howard Windsor didn't die. He changed his identity. He's now Harold West, a state councilman." As this revelation settled over them, Noah appeared with a new drawing, the backyard garden with roses blooming over what looked like human silhouettes beneath the soil. The next morning, a friendly young officer named Ryan Carter stopped by, claiming to be checking on their well-being after the storm the previous night. His warm manner and genuine concern made Eleanor want to trust him. "I'm new to the department," he confided. "Some things here don't sit right with me. If you ever need help, ma'am, I'm usually patrolling this area." He left his card with a personal number scribbled on the back. That night, the manifestations intensified. Doors slammed on their own. Victoria's portrait wept actual tears. The piano played frantically, the same chord sequence repeatedly. Rusty howled inconsolably until Eleanor followed him to a concealed panel in the basement floor. Beneath it lay Victoria's final evidence, a recorded confession from Howard Windsor detailing not only the embezzlement scheme, but his plans to handle his troublesome wife and children. Most damning was Chief William Reynolds' voice, clearly promising to ensure any investigation would be redirected. Another recording revealed something even more chilling. Multiple men's voices discussing the Brotherhood, a network spanning several states that protected its members from any accusations, particularly from women. They spoke of judges who would dismiss cases, doctors who would question women's mental health, and police who would lose evidence, all to maintain their power. Eleanor uploaded everything to a secure cloud account and sent emails to multiple news outlets and the FBI, explaining her situation and the evidence she discovered. As she resurfaced from the basement, Officer Carter stood in her living room, alone. "Mrs. Matthews," he said, his warm demeanor gone, "I'm afraid I can't let you continue with this." "You're one of them," Eleanor realized, backing away. Carter nodded. "Fourth generation. My grandfather was there the night they buried Victoria and her children. Reynolds sent me to assess how much you knew. I've been watching your house for days." Before Eleanor could react, Rusty launched himself at Carter, teeth sinking into the officer's arm. The distraction allowed Eleanor to grab Noah and run upstairs where Sophia was listening to music, unaware of the danger. "We need to leave. Now!" Eleanor gasped, but as they rushed toward the back stairs, Richard's voice froze her in place. "Going somewhere, Eleanor?" Richard Matthews stood in the hallway, immaculate in his tailored suit, flanked by Chief Reynolds and an older man Eleanor recognized from photographs as Harold West, formerly Howard Windsor. "You've led us on quite a chase," Richard said with a smooth voice that once made her heart race. "It's time to come home now. The children need stability." "These delusions of yours have gone far enough," Reynolds added. "Your husband has explained everything. We're here to help." Eleanor saw the familiar terror in her children's eyes, the same fear she lived with for years. Behind Richard, she glimpsed Victoria's transparent figure, her expression a mirror of Eleanor's own rage and determination. "You have no power here," Eleanor said, surprising herself with her steady voice. "None of you." Richard's charm evaporated. "I have custody papers, signed by a judge who understands that you're unstable, dangerous even. Just like Victoria Windsor was unstable." Eleanor countered, watching West's expression flicker. Before you buried her and her children in the garden? You should be careful about making accusations, Reynolds warned, hand drifting toward his holster, especially ones you can't prove. I found Howard's confession, Eleanor revealed, and Victoria's evidence about the Brotherhood. All of it, already uploaded to the cloud and sent to the FBI. She's bluffing, West snapped, speaking for the first time, his voice trembling with age and anger. No one would believe her over us. Do you know what Richard did to me when I found out about his money laundering? Eleanor asked, edging the children toward an alcove. The same thing you did to Victoria when she discovered yours. The difference is, I survived. You stupid bitch, Richard hissed, advancing toward her. You think anyone will believe you? Over me? Over the police chief? Over a state councilman? As his hand raised, Rusty lunged, teeth sinking into Richard's arm. The momentary chaos allowed Sophia to grab Noah and duck into a hidden passage Eleanor had discovered the day before, one leading to the greenhouse. Get them! West shouted, but as Richard and Carter moved to follow, the temperature in the room plummeted. The chandelier swayed violently. Picture frames crashed to the floor. Victoria's portrait fell, the canvas splitting precisely across Howard's painted face. A woman's voice, audible to everyone present, filled the room. Not this time. The ghostly forms of Victoria and her children materialized, their presence undeniable. Victoria's spirit stood protectively before Eleanor, mirroring her stance. Do you believe old secrets stay buried forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In this moment of supernatural chaos, the front door burst open. A team of FBI agents flooded in, led by a stern-faced woman in her 60s. FBI, hands where we can see them, she commanded. Reynolds reached for his weapon but froze when 4 agents trained their guns on him. Richard, bleeding from Rusty's bite, looked desperately for an escape route. Carter raised his hands immediately, his young face pale with fear. Walter Reynolds, Richard Matthews, Harold West, Ryan Carter, you're under arrest, announced the lead agent, introducing herself as Special Agent Diana Scott. Conspiracy, obstruction of justice, money laundering, and accessory to murder. As the men were handcuffed and led away, Eleanor noticed the family resemblance between Diana and Victoria's portrait. You're her sister, she realized aloud. Diana nodded, emotion briefly breaking through her professional demeanor. I've been looking for Victoria and her children for 40 years. When you bought this house and started asking questions, I knew it was time. How did you find me? Eleanor asked. We've been investigating the Brotherhood for 5 years, Diana explained. Your husband's organization came on our radar when a former associate turned state's witness. When you disappeared, we monitored his communications. He led us straight to you. Eleanor's relief turned to confusion. You were watching, but you didn't help when he found us? We needed him to lead us to the others, Diana said regretfully. I'm sorry we couldn't intervene sooner, but we had to wait until they were all together. The Brotherhood has protected each other for generations. We needed to take down the entire Pine Hollow branch at once. In the days that follow, forensic teams unearthed 3 sets of remains in the garden, exactly where Noah's drawings indicated. The town watches in collective shock as the respected police chief, State Councilman Harold West, and the charismatic Richard Matthews were implicated not only in the Windsor family murders, but in a decades-long conspiracy of corruption and violence. The investigation revealed the Brotherhood had chapters in 12 states, with hundreds of members, judges, police chiefs, doctors, lawyers, and businessmen who systematically protected each other from accusations, particularly from women. Diana explained that the Pine Hollow chapter was one of the oldest, dating back to the 1950s. The recordings and documents Eleanor found provided the missing evidence needed to bring down the entire network. Richard's empire crumbled as his financial crimes were exposed alongside Eleanor's documented abuse. His powerful friends distanced themselves as public opinion turned against men who hurt women behind closed doors. For Eleanor and her children, the aftermath brought challenges of its own. Testifying against Richard drained her emotionally, but each day in court strengthened her resolve. Sophia, once withdrawn, found her voice as an advocate for other children who had witnessed domestic violence. Noah's nightmares gradually subsided, his drawings filling with color instead of shadows. 6 months later, the Windsor mansion glowed with warm light, its renovation complete. Where darkness once reigned, sunlight now streams through clean windows. The garden blooms with memorial roses for Victoria and her children, finally laid to rest properly. Eleanor stood on the porch, watching Sophia teach a neighbor's daughter self-defense moves on the lawn. Noah played with Rusty, his drawings now filled with color and joy rather than hidden rooms and buried secrets. The doll Amelia sat on a shelf in the newly established Windsor Memorial Library room, her cracked face restored, a reminder of a silence finally broken. With the settlement money from Richard's estate and a book deal about her experience, Eleanor established the Windsor Center, a safe haven for women escaping abusive relationships. The first residents had already begun healing in the renovated carriage house behind the main mansion. Mildred Jenkins and other town women who once looked away now volunteered, determined to never again let silence enable abuse. Officer Ryan Carter's younger brother joined the local police force, committed to changing the department's culture from within after his brother's crimes came to light. Pine Hollow transformed. The conspirators who protected abusers had been removed from power. For the first time in generations, the town's leadership included women who understood that safety requires vigilance. On the anniversary of Eleanor's arrival, she hosted a memorial service for Victoria and her children. The entire town attended, bearing witness to a truth too long buried. Later, as snowflakes began to fall, Eleanor sat by the fireplace with a letter from a woman she'd never met, someone who left her own abusive husband after hearing the Windsor story on the news. "Your courage gave me courage," the letter concluded. "You showed me that it's never too late to save yourself." As Eleanor folded the letter, she caught a glimpse of Victoria's spirit in the doorway, flanked by her ghostly children. Unlike before, their expressions were peaceful. Victoria nodded once to Eleanor, one survivor to another, before the figures dissolved into the golden light of sunset. Eleanor watched the space where they stood, understanding now why she was drawn to this house, why the resemblance between her and Victoria was so strong. Some battles echo across time, waiting for someone strong enough to finally win them. The Brotherhood thought they were building a fortress, Diana had told her during their last meeting, but they were really building a prison for themselves, brick by brick, secret by secret. Rusty settled at her feet, no longer growling at empty hallways. Noah and Sophia argued good-naturedly over a board game. The piano hadn't played itself since the night of Richard's arrest. Standing at the window, Eleanor watched snow transform Pine Hollow into a postcard-perfect town. She caught her reflection in the glass, shoulders straight, eyes clear, the weight of fear finally lifted. Sometimes, she whispered to herself, into Victoria's memory, the oldest houses hold the newest beginnings, and sometimes it's the lost souls who teach us how to live. In the distance, church bells chime, a new year approaches. Outside, neighbors wave as they pass. Inside, a family continues healing, and beneath it all, truth rests easier than secrets ever did. For Eleanor Matthews, the future stretches before her, unwritten and finally her own. Thank you for listening to Secrets Beneath the Stone Roof. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more tales of courage and redemption. Remember, it's never too late to rewrite your own ending.